What's going on, traders? We got a few things to talk about, so let's get straight into it. So today was pretty boring, which is really expected considering the kind of day we had yesterday. Usually when the market has some huge move to the upside or a major move to the downside, you typically don't get much action the next day or two, which leads to consolidation or some type of cool down phase. And that's exactly what we got today. We didn't really get much of anything today. And so in the last video, we talked about a possible drop happening, and maybe we get one more bounce as well. And if we are talking about one more bounce, I personally think it's going to be the ultimate bull trap. Okay. Now, again, I'm not saying this bull trap is going to actually happen, or even upside is going to happen tomorrow. But if we just so happen to get that, I truly think it's going to lead into some huge trap. And we're going to talk about why, because I'm noticing a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of traders on YouTube, Reddit, whatever the case may be, they're really bullish, and I'm not necessarily seeing it, but I think I know why everyone's bullish. Okay, I didn't really read into the details on why everyone's bullish heading into the rest of the week, which is I guess one more day. But I kind of got an idea on why everyone's bullish, and we're going to talk about it in a bit. So right now we're looking at NQ, and NQ is just not in a bullish position in my opinion, at least short term. Now obviously long term we're absolutely bullish, right? But right now, if we zoom in on the NQ, we can actually go to the daily time frame just to get a better idea on where we are. We're below the supply and demand zone here. I mean, you see it here. We rejected here. We tried to break out here. We broke down, and then we started to consolidate here, and then we ended up having this bearish engulfing candle, and then we retested this area. And so I just don't see any reason to be absolutely bullish right now. I really don't. So maybe you guys see something. Let me know in the comments below. But right now, I'm just not necessarily seeing it. And so if we are talking about downside here, and we're talking about a price target, my first target will be 20,200. After 20,200, we're heading to 20,000. Okay. The lowest we can go, okay, the lowest target I'm looking at right now is about 19,700, which is pretty much outside of this rising wedge. And remember, we talked about these rising wedges just forming pretty much everywhere. Now, we do possibly have, I mean, we do have, not possibly, we actually do have news tomorrow that could change things, but I'm just not seeing it right now. We could do one of these moves where we, pretty much head towards 21K. That's very much possible. But right now, I'm just leaning more bearish and a possible move towards at least minimum 20K. It's also important to note that we still have this gap that needs to be filled, and it's very rare when the NQ and ES leaves gaps open. Now, triple Qs and SPY, they typically fill their gaps right away, and I know they're essentially the same thing. But when it comes to the futures tend to fill their gaps almost like immediately, so it's very rare that you leave gaps open on the futures. And this is what I talked about in the last video or two, where when NQ and ES leave gaps open, whenever they decide to fill that gap, especially to the downside, it's going to be very aggressive. All right, it's going to be a very aggressive drop, and so you're kind of witnessing it right here. Now, remember when we talked about those bearish engulfing candles forming everywhere, right? We have a bearish engulfing candle on the daily time frame, and remember I said bearish engulfing patterns do not have to play out right away. We have a perfect example right here where you have this bearish engulfing candle, and I mean this is just clear as day, a bearish engulfing candle. But look what happens the next few days. You just start to trickle down, and then eventually you start to get that major drop, right? So we can play games here for quite some time, and again, this is the daily time frame, so it can be very annoying for maybe the next few days or so. So I'm not counting on a drop happening right away. I do think a drop is coming, but I just wouldn't. I just wouldn't jump the gun until we get some type of confirmation, or at least some type of red candle forming here. All right. So again, we have this bearish engulfing candle. It doesn't have to play out right away, but I do think it's eventually going to play out, just considering where we are on the NQ. In regards to upside, if for me to see or consider upside, I would really like to see us get above at least 20,500. More so these guys right here. This area right here, you guys know how I am about like turbulence and like major points of interest where you're seeing a lot of like bullish and bearish consolidation in one spot. So like I said before in the last video, for me to want to be comfortable with downside here, I would like to see these guys get taken out here and get stopped out of their position, and then that's when I will be like, you guys will see like a video of me saying like, all right, it's time, okay, it's absolutely time. We're dropping fast, and I think once we break past these guys here, that's when we're going to start heading towards at least this gap fill, but my price target of 19,700. In regards to upside, I want to see us get above these guys here as well on the daily time frame, which is about around 20,700 more or less. And so if we get past either one of these areas, and I mean you see it here, we're just consolidating here because the market is trying to decide or having a hard time breaking in either direction because there's just a lot of turbulence here. So whatever news comes in that can cause this move, we'll just have to wait and see. But just be very, very careful, or be very aware of both these sides. We break above here, we're definitely heading towards 21,000. We break below here, then we're plummeting. Okay. At some point, we're going to start heading towards this fair value gap towards 19,200. But we won't talk about that. We're pretty far off from there, so we won't talk about that now. We look at the ES. And the ES, I mean, this was clean. I mean, such a clean rejection here. We talked about this in the Discord. I mentioned this in the Discord a few days ago. You hit this monthly level, and in the last video I mentioned this. Last two videos I mentioned this. You hit this monthly level right here at around 5930. Okay, 5,930. And so we rejected here. I mean, we tried to break above, and this was the monthly high, right? So I mean, again, we can play games here for quite some time. We're looking at the daily time frame again. We could just do this all day, every freaking day until whenever happens. Maybe elections, I don't know. But it's going to be, I imagine it's going to be very annoying if this happens. And once again, we just have this huge area of turbulence right here that's just going to be very hard to break, okay? So if we break past this, I imagine that this is where a huge correction is going to come in. If not, maybe some flash crash or something like that. But we still have this gap all the way down at the 5600 range, 5650, somewhere around there, more or less. And if we break past these guys, I mean, look at how much turbulence is right here. This is like a huge wall right here. So if we just manage to break past these guys, it's going to get ugly. I mean, it gets very illiquid after this, okay? So I imagine whatever news comes in, it's going to be very bad. It needs to be very bad for us to really just break past this and start to break lower, okay? And it gets very illiquid. We'll drop so fast, okay? So I imagine at some point that if this does happen, that's going to be some type of correction or somewhat of a flash crash or crash, whatever the case may be. But yeah, be very careful here. So looking at the triple Qs. And triple Qs, we're looking at the same thing. I mean, we saw the same setup on the NQ, right? A lot of turbulence, and we tried to break below this area. We actually did, but then we just got back up in here once again, and so we're back in this area of just turbulence where we just have to pick a direction. So it can be very annoying. We could just sit here for quite some time, right? And we go down to the 4-hour time frame. As you guys can see, we broke this trend. We bounced here multiple times. We broke down, and now we're at this fair value gap, and we're below the fair value gap. Today we took advantage and filled this gap up right here towards the 490 range. And so if we cannot get back above this fair value gap and clear this area out, then we're probably going to head much lower, and I will have a price target at least short term for 485. So that's what I'm looking at. In regards to upside, I did have a target of 505, but right now, just considering where we are, it's just tough to see that happening at this point. I do think 510 is going to happen sometime this year, but as of now, where we're at, it's really tough for me to see that happening. And so tomorrow could be very much a boring day. We do have news tomorrow, granted. Let's actually check that out. We do have news tomorrow. It's actually tomorrow's Friday, right? So we have news tomorrow. We have, I believe, consumer sentiment, inflation expectations, so on and so forth. So we have news, and maybe that can influence that possible drop or even upside and just break below this area of turbulence or even above this area right here at around 498. So that's what I will be looking for the triple Qs. Short-term target is 485 if we just so happen to break down. As far as upside, I'm looking at about 505, 510. SPY. So SPY, we're still in this rising wedge. We're still here. We're still pretty much safe in regards to SPY. I will argue that you can argue that there's a possible double bottom right here. I wouldn't blame you for saying this at all. I mean, it's pretty clean, I would say. You have your bottom here. and then you have another bottom here as well, and then you have your neckline, which is essentially this fair value gap. Really, you have your neckline right about here, so we could see a jump tomorrow. I mean, you see, like, there's a lot of resistance right in this area here, so we have a possible double bottom. Let's go to like the 2 hour time frame, maybe it'll show up a little better here. But yeah, you have this possible double bottom here. I mean, we can even argue that it might be somewhat of an ascending triangle. Again, if it looks like the pattern, assume that it is until proven otherwise. So we have some type of bullish signal here, but again, just based off what we're seeing on the NQ and the triple Qs, it's really tough for me to see this playing out. So if we are looking to be bullish, I will look for a break above about 582. That's what I would be looking for. Break, hold, retest 582, then chances are you're heading towards 587, and then we're going to the moon from there. So this is what I would be looking for in regards to the SPY. As long as we're in this rising wedge, I will say we're sort of safe, but considering where NQ is, NQ could lead the way to possible downside. So we'll see. In regards to Bitcoin, okay, so this is why I think everyone's kind of bullish here in regards to Bitcoin, because we talk about this all the time, how Bitcoin can possibly be a leading indicator, right? We talk about this like almost every video. I'm trying to talk about Bitcoin a lot more because it is, I do believe that it's a leading indicator, and it has yet to prove me wrong on this. I used to not believe that, but now that Bitcoin has actual stocks and has an ETF and has actual footing in the market, it's very good at giving a sign on what we're looking at as in terms of direction here. And so we look at the daily time frame in regards to Bitcoin. I think this is why everyone's somewhat bullish. We have this bullish engulfing candle forming here, okay? But the day is not over for Bitcoin, at least for the crypto side, right? But if we close above this, then there's definitely potential for more upside. I will say that if we get below 67,800, then that leads to possible downside within the market. So right now we're pretty much hugging this area. We're on a 4 hour time frame right now. We broke back above this trend, and now we're pretty much just looking to mount it, I would say. But I just wouldn't get my hopes up quite yet, because at some point in time, I imagine, unless we just continue to the upside, unless we just continue from here, I imagine Bitcoin is going to want to do one of these moves first, possibly head towards 67K. There's just a lot of turbulence here as well, so we need really bad news. So I think this is why everyone's bullish. Again, just looking at NQ and triple Qs, I'm not quite there yet. I don't think this is the case, but it's very much possible considering where Bitcoin is and that possible double bottom for the SPY. And the reason why I say possible is that double bottoms are not confirmed until you break the neckline. There's very much potential for upside. So next we want to look at Nvidia, and so Nvidia is actually looking good as well. It's not looking too bad. It reclaimed 140, which is a pretty big deal, I would say. And it's still in this rising wedge. We're on a 4 hour time frame, by the way, so we're still within this rising wedge pattern. So Nvidia still looks okay. And again, you can argue that there's double bottom here. You have your bottom here, and then you have another bottom here, and then your neckline will be about right here. So you can argue this, okay? You can very much argue this. And in case you think I'm making it up, I mean, you see the rejection here. I don't know if you guys can see these wicks, but you see it here multiple times where we're pretty much testing this area right here. And then we came back up here, retested again. We can go down to the 2 hour time frame and get a better idea. And I mean, it looks pretty clean, right? So we have a bottom here, potential bottom here. It's not the cleanest of bottoms. I mean, you can argue that this is a higher low, if anything, and then you have your super clean neckline right here. So I would say to really be comfortable with Nvidia, I would like it to really get above 141. That's just me. 140 is a big deal. I just want to be safe and see if Nvidia gets above 141, because this can easily be a trap. I mean, it really could. So we'll see, okay? But I just wouldn't jump the gun until Nvidia at least gets above 141. And if you really, I mean, really want to play it safe, if you're the type of trader to trade off fair value gaps, I would look for 142. Okay, so 141, you can maybe like add some, contracts in here around 141, but 142, I think, is your golden ticket for that move to 150 that we talked about in our last video. So that's what I would be looking at in regards to Nvidia. And in case you're new to the channel, you're wondering where I'm getting 150 from. The top of this rising wedge, pretty much. You're looking at the top of this rising wedge, and if Nvidia just breaks higher, you're easily heading towards at least 148, 150, and then you possibly just see another breakdown from there. But in regards to downside, I would say that at some point in time, Nvidia needs to head back towards at least 135. There's a gap right here that needs to be filled, and then lowest I'm looking at in regards to short term is 119. Nvidia kind of just left 119 and never looked back. So at some point in time, I do think Nvidia will have to retest 119. And so we can look at Tesla real quick. So this is very interesting. Congratulations to everyone in the Discord who traded Tesla with me. Traded its earnings. Very nice play here. This guy, he made about 1,200 off the play. I think majority of people made like 1,200. I alerted to everyone just to go really light, get like one or two contracts, don't go crazy because it's earnings. This guy made 1,300. Congratulations to him. It was a $189 contract, and then he got and we talked about this in the last video, this 232.5 call for October 25th, and just how whales were trading this play. You saw it. I showed it in the last video, just whales just loading up on these calls right before earnings, the 232.5 calls. And so I looked at the charts. I showed you guys the TA in the last video, and boom, you turn $189 into an easy 1,300 in one day. So it's earnings at the end of the day. It's always a gamble, but usually whales will give you an idea on what they're trying to do for earnings, especially when you're talking about big names like Tesla. And so that's the play. Congratulations. If you want access to plays like this, that's not lotto plays all the time. We rarely do lotto plays, but when we do, a lot of times they end up being big winners. So yeah, if you want access to that, Discord link is in the description below. So back to Tesla. So I talked about this in the Discord. My intentions on Tesla and where I'm looking for a possible selling opportunity. Let's get rid of this arrow here. Well, actually, we could just keep this arrow here. And so right here, these two, the supply and demand zone right here is our monthly levels. Okay, so this is where I think Tesla is trying to head towards. I think it's clear as day that Tesla's trying to head up here. And so, I mean, you see it here. We rejected here. We rejected here. We rejected this level so many times. And so I think Tesla is going to head back up here, and then that's when I think it's going to reject, and that's where I'm going to be looking to take a trade. I already alerted the Discord members on my plans for this. So around 268, 270, unless something changes or something changes in flow, options flow chain, I'm looking to get into puts here. Our bot alerted about 240 puts that's coming in tomorrow. So hopefully, if we are looking at one more pump to the upside, I imagine Tesla will head up here. Highest we're looking at is about right here, around 270, and then we reject and start to really clear this area out, at least to 240. I would say. I can't say for sure we're gonna do all of this. I imagine we're gonna at least head towards at least 230, 231, 232, somewhere around there, and then start to bounce from there, and then probably start breaking down from there. We'll see. But in regards to the long term, I'm very bullish on Tesla. I think Tesla is easily going to see 300. I mean, look at this weekly chart. Tesla is screaming for a breakout. And so if anything, I think the next few weeks or so, you're going to see Tesla just probably head back down here to this fair value gap, mitigate this area. Probably the lowest I'm looking at is about 220. If Tesla hits 220, I would say between 220 230. If Tesla gets around that area, I would definitely look for long-term calls on Tesla, because there's no doubt in my mind this thing could see 300 at this point, especially after that last earnings report. This thing can easily head towards 300. You have an inverse head and shoulders pattern here. It's not the cleanest, but you have your shoulder here, head here, shoulder here. And so I think Tesla is absolutely ready to just demolish everything and head to the upside. Once we get that drop, I'm definitely looking at a more long-term trade, I should say. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at in regards to Tesla. We look at IWM, and I haven't talked about IWM in a minute. We're in a trade on IWM. We got into 209 puts for wait, was it 209? It was either 209 or 211 puts. The reason why I'm confusing the two is because the bot alerted 209 puts, but I think we're in 211 puts. I could be wrong there, either one. But regardless, we got into more puts at around 225 when IWM is 225. And so far we're in profit. IWM just simply looks bearish. The reason why I haven't talked about it is just it's been in a falling knife, so there's not much to talk about here. It's just been dropping non-stop. So it cleared out this area, is pretty much mitigating this fair value gap. It has a lot more to go to the downside, so we'll see what happens. So if we're looking at one more bounce sometime tomorrow, again, I think it's a trap. I would look for more puts at around 223, 225 range. And then after that, I think IWM is pretty much cooked, and then the market's going to go along with it. So we'll see. But other than that, that's really all I have. If anything, I would pay attention to Bitcoin. And I guess the conclusion here is pay attention to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin closes bullish for the day, then that's a good sign for the market in the morning. But any upside we do get, whether it's big or small, I absolutely think it's going to be a trap. And then we're going to see a major drop within the next week or so. We'll see. I'll update you guys obviously tomorrow, depending on how the market closes. Then we'll go from there. If you think I'm wrong, feel free to let me know. Maybe I missed something in the comments below. If you think I'm right, feel free to let me know as well. What do you agree with? And other than that, that's all I have. Discord link is in the description below if you want to see how we're going to trade this market. And until the next video, traders, have a good one.